all, I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. I'm going to show you today how to fuse together one of those beautiful gold beads for my new die collection, which I'm so excited about. So what I've done, you can take a look. I've made my beautiful little bead, which of course we'll be covering that in other videos, but I've made it, the two halves, it's laying there together. Normally what I do is I put a tiny little bit of G glue on there and then put the other one on top. I have it sitting on this little homemade titanium trivet because it won't interfere with the fusing at all. And that way I can let it dry on here, and then I'm just gonna pick up the whole cute little thing and stick it right in my kiln and fuse it. It's really a lot easier to do that than to like take binding wire and do a whole bunch of binding together, especially if you don't have a real round shape. So this is normally, I think, just like the easiest way. All right, I'm gonna try to get it in the kiln without knocking it. One word of advice too, if you put it down and they're like, oh, let me just adjust it a little bit. That's the devil talking. Don't do it, because you'll poke it in there. It'll, you know what I mean? It'll move, and it's like, wherever you set it down, if it's in place, just leave it alone. Okay, so this is really a lot like when you're fusing a bezel. I've got the seam lined up as nicely as I can reasonably manage. With any luck, I'll be able to do it all in one go. But normally, just like with a bezel, you start with really the best spot and get it started and then work my way around. If any areas look like the seam is not quite tight enough to fuse properly, I'll tack it in a spot or two and then take my tweezers maybe and give it a little squeeze, you know, like whatever I need to do to make sure it's touching, you know, all the way around to fill in. But since it's basically like fusing a bezel, I'm gonna use a 0 tip. First, I'm going to turn the tank on because you will find that that is super helpful for your fusing process. It's important to show real live studio scenarios. And in real life studio scenarios, you forget to turn the fucking tank on. That's just how it works. Okay, this time, look at that. Ta-da! So unlike granulation, when you're fusing a bezel or you're fusing one of these beads, it's like a full hiss flame, okay? So I'm gonna use the lid to cast a shadow. And I'm gonna work over here first and try to like just tack it a little bit. And just like with the bezel, I'm going to heat up the whole thing. I'm gonna go around and around and build up the heat until the seam is glowing, you know, brighter than everything else. And once I see that glowing nice and bright, like this, then I can go in there and hopefully put down some action. There we go. And then I'll flip it around and we'll do the other side. And the thing of it is, once you've tacked it, I can move it around in there with a lot more impunity because I know it's not gonna like just fall, you know. It's not gonna just fall off. I mean, it could fall off, but it'll stay in one piece. So I'll shift this just like this, which hopefully it'll be, you know, easy to see. Okay. Heat up the whole thing. And remember, the little trivet there is titanium, so it doesn't matter how hot it gets. It's not gonna melt. It's not gonna do anything, so you can safely ignore it, which is why we like it. And you see how it's getting hotter and hotter, and you can start to see the seam more clearly. You see like that, nice and bright. Because once you can see that, then we can get in there and hopefully start fusing a little bit. See that, how that got dark and filled in? Do a little bit in the middle, a little bit here. And you can see where it's still bright, it hasn't filled in yet. There we go, there we go. You know, and fusing is a gentle process. There we go. See how that got dark and filled in? Now, let me just shift that a tiny bit. That space looks a little big there. I'm gonna try to just get it to go. If not, Then I'll go in there and like squeeze a little bit, you know, to tighten it up. Now, if you get a really difficult area and you truly like feel like I can't fill it, you can always just mill a little piece of thin metal, the same 22 karat, shove it in there and fuse it in, and then you just file away the extra. So it's not really such a big, you know, emergency if you have a spot that maybe doesn't cooperate as well as you would like. Usually I can kind of squeeze it and fill it in, but if not, I'll just put another little piece of metal on there. Okay, make sure the rest of this is all done. Look at that, all beautiful. I'm gonna try to squeeze that in. Because you see what I mean, right? How it's like just a little brighter right there. Give it a gentle but hopefully firm squeeze. And you see how you build up the heat again? There you go. You see how that got dark and filled in? Like so. Beautiful. I think this should be all done. I'm gonna like rotate it again and heat it a little bit just so I can double check that the seam is all filled. But you know, the funny thing is, I mean, fusing takes practice, of course, but in a lot of ways doing this is easier than soldering, because when you solder, you got to get in there, you got to poke it, you got to place the solder and everything. This, at least once you get it positioned and in place, you can just heat it and get it to fuse. So I'll heat up this side and then we'll double check if there's any spaces. I think I got it the first time. Yep. I mean, you know, I'm doing a little bit more, but basically that's all done. Okay, so now I'm gonna take it out of the kiln. I'm gonna let it cool. I'll throw it in the pickle and we'll take a look at it. But look at that cute little thing. So adorable. So there's my bead, all pretty and fused together. You see? So then I can just, I'll, you know, maybe sand it with a little green paper. They honestly don't need an enormous amount of cleanup, which is always a plus. And then I'm on to the next bead. And there's just a little juicy close-up. Do you not love that shape? Oh my God, love these beads so much. I can't stand it. Nobody's been able to get a word of reason out of me since I started working on this die project, because I've just been so excited about it. So I did a little bit of sanding and look how adorable it is. Look, oh my God, can't stand it. Ridiculous. Adorable. Love it. All right, on to the next adventure.